There's been a lot of comments that's been made at this dais that, quite frankly, I respect the opinions, but strongly disagree with. And some of them, quite frankly, from my perspective, from my experience, was quite offensive. Now, I understand that it's coming from other perspectives, so I have to respect that, and I'm okay with that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that some of the things that are said can be disparaging and can hurt other people.
Race is a very difficult issue to discuss because it becomes extremely personal for many of those that you have a discussion with.
The history that we had with race certainly should be covered in our history. I'm concerned if to the extent they say, and things haven't changed in 100 years, which is what you hear quite often. Well, that's not the case. And if you look at modern, the current situation, if you look at it objectively and with data, you'll see that things are not as bad as what the progressives are painting the situation to be. And the other thing is there are quite a number of black economists and sociologists who have a completely different view than the left progressives do. And I'd hope that that material is in the library and that the students are exposed to that as well. I'm concerned that they're just getting one side, the progressive left side, the social justice warrior side, and not getting the other side. So.
Okay.
I received a document from apparently the National Museum of African American History and Culture that discussed aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture, which also were very troublesome and to be honest with you, difficult to even digest.
I don't know what it is that they have that is good, but what they have, enough of it is so bad that it needs to be stopped, in my opinion. This is, I mean,
Implicit bias and all that, yes, there are cases. I've run into it myself. I've had people make comments that are clear, would indicate some level of bias. But I think the best thing we should be doing is, as Martin Luther King said, judge people by the character of their souls and not by the color of their skin. And with that comment, I will yield back. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
President Lockhart.
Any other comments that need to be made before I make my comments and move on?
You make certain assumptions about the colored students, black students, and certain assumptions about white students.
That was very offensive.
Well, that was clearly a mistake, but...
It's called a microaggression.
Oh, Mr. Ristis.
Get over it.
Wow.
I will not get over it, sir.
We have to get...
It's honestly, it's mind-boggling. I can't even believe that the word colored students was used tonight. That is disgusting. I am personally offended. I would like an apology tonight. Tonight. And if not, I'd like it in writing.
the notion that you say, well, he's cruel, or to say, I mean, you'd have to come up with something more than just saying that there's no question about it.
You have to understand that there's people that have had experiences, no matter of their gender, their sex, their race, that they're all fighting to be at the table. They're fighting to stay at the table. They're fighting to eat the same quality of food and information like those that have always historically been at the table and been served at the table. Without objection, Mr. Panos.
I would point out, with regard to the racism, the issue here is that, I wouldn't, if I were a Democrat, I wouldn't want to talk too much about the history of racism, since almost every policy was passed by, every policy was passed by Democrats. So, if you want to talk about the origin from the point of view of an institution, you would have to look at yourself and the principles of that particular institution, which are collectivism, for one, and the idea that you can take from one person and give it to another just to collect votes, which has been the history of the party. Sorry, sir?
I'm sorry?
What?
I constantly heard the Democrats, my colleagues on the opposite side. I've constantly been hearing that in the dialogue. Every time we have this equity discussion, it's always the progressive, it's always the Democrats, it's always the majority that is believing in this. Yes, we own that. We own that.
All right, and it's,
Okay, and we're okay with that. Just like you will never hear me say anything negative about the conservative or the Republican. You've never heard me come after the Republicans or the Conservative Party in any of your viewpoints from this dais. You have a right to feel the way you feel as long as that we have civil and collaborative conversation, but it's always what we feel, what we feel, what we feel. So when you say you're not attacking, you may not think you're coming at us, but you are.
I said something here about Democrats here
A
tonight.
lot of people seem like they're tired of hearing about racism. That's what it seems like I'm hearing here. Well, you know what? I'm tired of freaking experiencing it, just like a lot of other people across the world is tired of experiencing racism. And people get offended when you got to start sharing power, resources, decision-making, and authority. All of a sudden now people get upset. That's my opinion. And the problem is that racism is alive and well. Intentional, unintentional, unintended, whatever you want to call it, it's alive and well. I don't care what party started it, who's picking up the mantle and running with it now. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is it's alive and well. And what are we doing as a district to address it? This is a very uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people to have. Those that have the perceived power and those that are fighting for the power. Mr. Panos.
I don't know where you're getting your history, Mr. Lockhart. Well, I do. It's out there on the YouTube, and the revisionist historians. You can see some of these things in, Wikipedia or whatever. Then you're just repeating things that you haven't researched, and that this is a ridiculous thing to do.
I categorically push back and reject the fact that my education is YouTube and Wikipedia. I'm a proud graduate of Weaver High School. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Hartford. So to think that I would lower myself to use YouTube and Wikipedia to stand on foundation in those things, I think it's, I don't believe you meant to come across that way, but that's the way I received it.
We went way off on generalities, but I think I will again reiterate.
When I walk out of Windsor, I'm not Leonard the firefighter anymore. I'm not Leonard the Board of Ed president no more. I'm Leonard the black man. And I'm subjected to all the other things and all the other racial things that are going on in this country.
Critical race theory, which, according to Wikipedia anyway, maybe it's not the authoritative source, but critical race theory developed out of Marxism and postmodern philosophy. It is based on critical theory, a social philosophy that argues that social problems are influenced and created more by societal structures and cultural assumptions than by individual and psychological factors.
Somehow we're going to get past this. We are going to get past this. Whether you like it or not, we're going to get past this as a board together.